Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into a wealth of information, extracting those golden nuggets of knowledge that help you become truly well-informed. Today, we're embarking on a fascinating journey. It's all about the art and science of written communication, how to be clear, correct, and most importantly, persuasive on the page. Our guide for this deep dive is Sam Leith's excellent book, Right to the Point: How to Be Clear, Correct, and Persuasive on the Page. And Sam Leith, well, he really lives and breathes words. He's the literary editor at The Spectator, columnist for the Financial Times. You've probably seen his stuff in The Guardian, The Times. Plus, he's a seasoned broadcaster and wrote You Talking to Me, Rhetoric from Aristotle to Obama.
Yeah.
So our mission today isn't just about, wading through dusty grammar rules. We're here to unearth practical, actionable strategy, things that will make your words work harder for you every single time you write.
Exactly. And it's important to know that this book, Right to the Point, which came out in 2017 from Profile Books, it's not aiming to be some rigid rule book. It won't make you feel bad about a misplaced comma. It's really meant as a practical aid for, well, anyone who writes. It's about getting the mechanics of language so you can use it more effectively, with purpose.
Okay, brilliant. So let's dive right in. Sam Leith kicks things off with a really foundational truth, doesn't he? That English isn't just one static thing.
Not at all. No. What's really insightful is how he describes English. He calls it a huge, messily overlapping mass of dialects and accents and professional jargons and slangs. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. You've got the precise, almost alien sound of legalese, right? Or that weird Russian-inflected nadsat in A Clockwork Orange.
Oh, yeah.
Or even just, the super fast abbreviated text speak in your texts or on Twitter. They all share common roots, sure, but each one has their own vocabularies and grammatical peculiarities. And this leads straight into what the book calls language wars. It shows how deeply social language is, how tied to our identity. There's this persistent belief in a right and a wrong way to speak or write. Sometimes it's really explicit, pedants complaining about the corruption of the Queen's English.
We've all met them.
Exactly. And other times it's more subtle, like a suspicion between people who use different dialects. The main point is your language choices signal something about you, about your group.
That's a really powerful idea, that language is more than just info. And building on that, the book makes a critical distinction, one we often miss. Speech versus writing. What's the core idea there?
Well, he introduces something called the Barnes Principle. Basically, it says, you can make anybody look like an idiot by quoting them verbatim.
Huh. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
It's so true, because spoken language is, well, much more loosely packed and less structured. It's full of and those empty phrases that actually help us think and help the listener keep up. Writing, though, that's an arbitrary and artificial code, something that's painstakingly taught and practiced. And crucially, it assumes a theoretical or imaginary reader.
A message in a bottle kind of thing.
Exactly like a message in a bottle. You send it out hoping it gets there, understood. And the practical implication for you, the writer, is huge. In speech, listeners can't press rewind, right? So we naturally repeat ourselves more.
Makes sense.
But with writing, your reader can go back, they can reread, so you need to be much more precise, more structured on the page.
Okay, that clicks. So thinking about that reader, how does our brain actually process reading? It's not purely abstract, is it?
No, absolutely not. Reading isn't just, thinking. It actually uses the auditory centers of the brain, especially when you sound out new words in your head. And, maybe more surprisingly, it relies heavily on our visual systems. Our brains are kind of geared to recognizing things in the world, not abstract symbols. Think about early pictograms.
Right. Pictures first.
Exactly. And this understanding leads to two golden rules for writers. First, try to use concrete language, words that create pictures, real-world things. It asks less work of the reader's brain. It's easier. Second, pay attention to the sound and rhythm of your words. And that often means actually reading your material aloud. Your ear catches stuff, your eye misses.
Reading it aloud. Yeah, that's classic advice. And that brings us to reading today, especially on screens, where reading aloud isn't really the norm.
Precisely. The book talks about continuous partial attention as the default mode of reading online.
Continuous partial attention, I feel that.
We all do. The sci-fi writer Cory Doctorow called the internet an ecosystem of interruption technologies. Links, ads, notifications.
Yeah.
You're always being pulled away. There's even a term for it, wilfing. W-wilf, what are they looking for? It perfectly captures that fragmented online focus.
Huh. Wilfing. I'm definitely guilty of wilfing.
Aren't we all? And this is why the book mentions e-ink screens, like on Kindles, are less taxing than bright screens, fewer interruptions built in.
So, pulling this together, Understanding your audience is key, right? How does that really shape your strategy?
Well, the basic idea is that communication works better. It's more meaningful, more instantly precise when the shared references are stronger. The book uses a great analogy. Particle physicist speaks unto particle physicist more easily than particle physicist speaks unto 6-year-old. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Common ground.
And that connects directly to phatic communication. That's language used just solely to establishing human or tribal commonality.
Like small talk.
Exactly like small talk. Phrases like, how do you do? Hello? Maybe, how about them Dodgers? They're not about new information. They're about establishing that the line's open. Testing the mic, basically. It's what we do with accents, too, and that thing called accommodation.
Accommodation.
Yeah, like when someone's Scottish accent gets thicker when they go home to visit family, you subtly adjust your language for the context. It reminds us, as the book says, that none of us speaks a single English. We need to tailor the message to the tribe we're talking to.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty then. The building blocks, starting with nouns.
Right, nouns. We first learn their words for things, cat, Donald, but the book gives a more accurate take. A noun is a word that does nouny things.
Does nouny things.
Yeah, like it comes after a, or the egg, a cat, or it acts as the subject of a sentence. It's the role the word plays that matters most. Like, is face a noun or a verb in this sentence? That tells you the meaning. Then you've got pronouns, the stand-ins, personal ones, I, you, he, she, we, they, possessive, mine, yours, reflexive, myself, yourself. The main headache with pronouns is getting the case right, making sure it agrees with the word it's replacing, like I bite him versus he bites me. It's subtle but important.
Okay. And adjectives.
Adjectives, yeah. They can be attributive, like yellow curtain right before the noun, or predicative, like I was sad after the verb. There are little quirks, like those A adjectives. You can say my mother is awake, but my awake mother just sounds wrong.
Huh. Never thought about that.
Right. The book says your own ear will be the best guide here. It also covers comparatives, superlatives, good, better, best, the irregulars. And it touches on using absolute adjectives like pregnant or perfect as intensifiers. Logically, you can't be very pregnant, but we say it.
Right.
Or a more perfect union, it's idiomatic.
That point about trusting your ear is quite liberating.
Yeah.
And the general advice for adjectives and adverbs is often less is more, isn't it?
Exactly. The book hammers this home. Use adjectives sparingly because the right noun should carry most of it. Saying furry, bouncy, yellow-green, fist-sized sphere instead of just tennis ball, well, it slows the reader down. Too much work.
Right, cognitive load.
Precisely. Adjectives are stative. They take action out of a sentence. And the book warns against those conga lines of empty adverbial intensifiers, really.
Yeah.
Very absolutely. And also be-vegging adverbs, like arguably, possibly. They often just weaken your point.
Okay, clear advice. Now, what about the age-old debate? Active versus passive voice. We're always told avoid the passive. But the book pushes back.
It does. It calls that advice just nonsense, which is quite strong. And for good reason. The passive voice is really useful sometimes. Like when you don't know who did the action, or you want the focus firmly on the subject, the person or thing receiving the action.
Could you give an example?
Sure. A man was stabbed outside a nightclub is often much better than someone stabbed a man. It puts the focus where it needs to be on the victim and avoids a vague someone. It's about picking the right tool. The book also glances at verb tenses, past continuous, present perfect, and so on, and modality. That's the subtle stuff, like possibility, obligation, certainty.
Modality.
Yeah.
Sounds technical.
It sounds technical, but it's things we do naturally, like the difference between you must do this, that's obligation, deontic modality, versus you might do this, that's possibility, epistemic modality. Understanding these helps you consciously control your tone and how persuasive you are, even if you use them without thinking, usually.
Okay, so we have the words. How do they combine into sentences that actually work?
Well, the simplest definition of a sentence is just something that begins with a capital letter and ends with a full stop, or similar mark. But that's just a convention for writing down speech patterns. The book breaks down sentence types. Simple, complex, that's a main clause plus a dependent one, like the cat, which was now suffering, crawled.
Right.
Then compound sentences with two main verbs for the same subject, like the cat dozed off, but the cat was woken up. And you can combine these into complex compound sentences. Now, this might feel like being back in English class.
A little bit.
Yeah, but the book reassures you. You do this naturally when you speak. You understand their grammar, even if you can't immediately label it. You know how to link ideas. Basically, you know more than you know you know.
That's good to hear. So it's not about memorizing terms.
Not primarily, no. It's about recognizing the power you already have.
And moving beyond the sentence, how do we structure longer pieces? Paragraphs, sections?
Right. While the sentence is where the hardest work is done, organizing the bigger picture requires application.
Right.
You need to make it easy for the reader to navigate your thoughts. It's like architecture for ideas.
Okay, structure matters. Now, punctuation. It can feel like just a load of annoying rules. But the book has a more refreshing take.
It does. It acknowledges there are rules, definitely, but also that they're subject to fashion. Right now, the trend is towards light punctuation, fewer commas, maybe skipping full stops in texts, fewer hyphens. The goal is always clarity in guiding the reader. It hovers the main sentence ending marks. The full stop, or period, signals the end, but often dropped in headlines or texts. The question mark for direct questions only, and the exclamation mark.
Ah, yes, the dreaded exclamation mark.
As Scott Fitzgerald said, using too many is like laughing at your own joke. But they are needed for actual exclamations. How silly. Wishes, alarms. Just, use them one at a time, generally. Then you've got the ellipsis, indicating a pause or missing words in a quote. Though for formal quotes, square brackets are clearer for omissions. Commas are workhorses. Separating clauses after introductions, setting off extra info like the man who smelled a fish showed me the door. It also tackles the Oxford comma.
The great comma debate.
Indeed. It's a style choice, but sometimes it's essential to avoid confusion, like, my parents, the Queen and the Pope, are the Queen and Pope your parents. A comma before and clarifies. Paired dashes like these act somewhere between the comma and the bracket. A bit more emphatic. They have limits, though. The apostrophe, use it for possession, the cat's whiskers, and attraction to, but crucially, not for possessive pronouns like its, the cat chased its tail. And try to rephrase awkward double possessives like St. Peter's knave.
Good tip. What about quotes?
Quotation marks for direct speech or quoted text. Be consistent with single versus double. The book explains where punctuation goes inside or outside and how U.S. Hugh Kyles differ. And it shows how square brackets let you tweak a quote to fit your sentence grammatically, like, he believed we should fight, without misrepresenting the original. Finally, it mentions ampersands, not really for normal prose and smiley emoticons, which add modal glosses, hints of tone like ooh for a stare, vital in text.
That's a really practical look at punctuation as a tool, not just rules. So, beyond correctness, how do we make writing truly compelling?
A key rule is, say something once, why say it again? If you have 2 or more consecutive sentences express exactly the same thought, you're basically publishing a draft. Cut the repetition, make one sentence strong. Efficiency and impact.
Right. Get to the point. And of course, we have to talk about storytelling. It's just inherently compelling, isn't it?
Absolutely. If someone says, I want to tell you a story, you lean in, don't you? Stories give us purchase for human sympathy or identification. We can insert ourselves into the story. They give shape to experience, suggesting order and causation. Think Harry Potter's arc versus, say, the ending of Easy Rider.
Yeah, very different shapes.
Dale Carnegie said, the great truths of the world have often been couched in fascinating stories. And Brene Brown calls stories data with the soul. They build connection.
Data with a soul. I like that. And building on that engagement, the book mentions anargia, painting pictures with words. How does that work?
Anargia is about creating a visual or sensual image using sensory details, sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, making the reader feel it. The book uses an example of Obama describing arriving exhausted in Greenwood, South Carolina, the heat, the dust. Those details make it real. They pull you in. It's about transport, not just reporting.
So using sensory details, what about metaphor and analogy?
Hugely useful tools, especially for abstract ideas. Think Warren Buffett. Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Instantly clear, right?
Yeah, vivid.
Or explaining gravity with a heavy ball on a trampoline. But we have to remember, analogies are necessarily a falsification. They simplify. And anecdotes aren't data. They illustrate, they don't prove.
Good caveat. Now, let's talk about the music of prose. Cadence, rhythm. How important is that?
Hugely important. Prose has pauses and its rushes and its arpeggios. Punctuation originally marked breathing spots for reading aloud. Sentence breaks, word choice, they all affect the flow. The book says a good writer doesn't just have a brain. He or she has an ear. Which is why reading your work aloud is so valuable. Your ear tells you if it flows or if it clunks.
Right. Listening for the clunks.
Exactly. Sentences that are all the same length or structure become monotonous. Varying sentence structure and sentence length keeps the reader engaged. It's that sweet spot between predictability and variation that excites the brain. There's an example of a politician's phrase, "I am Scottish by birth, by choice, and by aspiration." The rhythm makes it sound meaningful, even if the logic is maybe a bit thin. Cadence creates an impression of sense.
Fascinating how rhythm itself persuades. Let's unpack rhetorical figures.
Okay.
How do they add persuasive punch?
Figuration puts an extra persuasive twist on things. Makes sentences tight and dynamic, gives the reader stepping stones. They're like stylish, load-bearing memes. Key ones include parallelism, similar structures side by side, like Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins. And apposition, balancing clauses, my girlfriend, the light of my life, drop the toaster. Then antithesis, contrast and balance. Give me liberty or give me death. Muhammad Ali used it brilliantly, contrasting brown people in Vietnam with so-called Negro people in Louisville to build kinship.
Oh, that's a powerful example.
It really is. And tricolons grouping in threes, they have an almost magical effect on rhythmic authority. That Scottish phrase again, by birth, by choice, and by aspiration, works on the ear, not on the brain. Just don't overdo them.
Threes are powerful, and sometimes the simplest figure is just asking a question.
Absolutely. Most writing is asking and answering questions anyway. Stating the question clearly helps everyone. It grabs attention, registers sharply on the reader's concentration, marks a shift, like, okay, let's tackle this now.
Yeah.
You remember Rick Perry forgetting his third point in that debate? Shows what happens if you haven't clearly defined your own questions and answers.
Ouch, yeah. Okay, shifting gears slightly. The writing process itself. Starting any document, big or small, where do we begin? It can feel overwhelming.
First step, don't panic. The book is reassuring here. It says most writers learn what they mean in the process of writing it. But planning is still key. Ordering thoughts, knowing your premises and conclusions, grouping ideas into units of thought. The author pictures them like spider plants viewed from the air, a main idea with supporting tendrils. Prioritize based on logic or desired impact. And there are classic structures you can borrow. Say it 3 times. Tell them what you'll say. Say it. Tell them you said it. Exposition, argument, recap. Simple but effective. Classical structure from ancient rhetoric. Exordium, grab attention. Narration, facts, proof, argument, peroration, sum up. Fascinating ADA for marketing. Attention, interest, desire, action. Good for persuasion. And the inverted pyramid for news. Vital info first. Headlines are like a pre-nut graph summary of the summary.
Okay, lots of frameworks. What about camera shots?
Yeah, that's a neat technique. Start with a close-up, one-person story like Muhammad in a civil war, then pull back to the bigger view, history, context, give scope, and finally try closing where you opened. Reference your beginning at the end, gives a nice sense of closure, makes it feel neat and well-made.
Great practical tips. Let's move to specific formats now, starting with letters. Are these still relevant?
The book argues, yes, definitely, for certain things. Dead tree letters still have weight for legal stuff, condolences, congratulations, maybe romance. Email is just a development of the letter anyway. For business letters, it's all about professionalism. Get the forms of address spot on. Dear Sir, Madam versus a name. Yours faithfully versus yours sincerely. Titles for doctors, professors, lords.
Details matter.
Hugely.
Yeah.
And crucially, spell the person's name and get their job title right. The author mentions journalists instantly binning press releases with errors like that. Shows lack of care. For job applications and CVs, absolute priority is to look professional. And proofread that sucker into the ground. Address a named person if possible. And get this, an eye-tracking study found recruiters spend just 6 seconds on a CV looking at 6 things. Name, current previous job, dates, education.
6 seconds. Wow.
So that inverted pyramid structure is vital for CVs. Put the best stuff right at the top. Don't bury the lead.
Okay, makes sense. And what about complaining effectively, not just ranting?
Counterintuitively, perhaps, avoid demanding language like I demand. Go for polite phrasing. In the circumstances it seems reasonable to expect. The book references Shakespeare Hotspur asking Glendower if spirits will they come when you do call for them. Just because you demand doesn't mean you'll get it. Politeness, even apologies, can work wonders, like getting parking tickets canceled. Reasonableness often wins.
Interesting. So politeness pays.
Yep.
What about letters to friends or thank you notes?
Letters to friends are an unbridled exercise in voice. Basically, no rules. Doodles welcome. It's a lifelong conversation. The book mentions Philip Larkin's last letter to Kingsley Amis poignant because he left out his usual jokey sign-off for the transcriber. The job is to entertain, and Martin Amis noted that sometimes reading about misery is more fun than happiness in postcards. Thank you letters written on actual paper show effort. That effort signals real appreciation and increases considerably thereby the chance that they'll treat you again. The medium is part of the message.
Absolutely. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for many people. Digital communication. How has that changed the game?
Fundamentally, online, it's about getting and retaining attention. It's all about clickiness and stickiness.
Clickiness and stickiness.
Yep. Online, pictures go further than text alone, and emotional content or social logic works really well. Anger, outrage, humor, curiosity, astonishment, even tribal virtue signaling. That's why you see so much hyperbole, will astound you, you won't believe. And listicles. It's an informal, amped-up, compressed, and maximalist style designed to grab you fast.
So how does that apply to email?
For email, first, avoid spam filters. No all-cap D subjects, trigger words, free sex, huge fonts, too many links. Subject lines need to be clear, personal, relevant, interesting. And crucially, attention spans are short. Always put the most important material in the first couple of paragraphs. Respect their time.
Good point. What about web pages?
Average attention span is 10 seconds or less, and there are diminishing returns. Just adding more words doesn't mean people read more. Brevity is key online. But the web also enables amazing things like citizen journalism. Elliot Higgins, Brown Moses, Bellingcat is a prime example. Using online tools, social media, he identified weapons, troop movements, gained huge expertise and political impact.
Incredible. And social media itself. The etiquette.
Oh, yeah, lots of nuances. Untagging people who aren't actually involved. The difference between an @reply versus quoting or starting with a dot, that last one can be seen as an act of aggression.
Aggression via punctuation.
Pretty much. And corporate hashtags can backfire spectacularly, like the Southern Rail example where people turned it against the company. Plus, internet language changes incredibly fast. Trump's not. David Cameron using LOL, terms like Rufalcopter.
Yeah.
They date instantly. You have to keep up.
It moves so fast. Okay, finally, before we wrap up, a quick word on just layout. Fonts, presentation.
Keep it simple. Stick to light, legible, sober, and well-spaced fonts. Fonts shouldn't scream and draw attention to itself. Serve the message, don't distract. It also touches briefly on ragged right versus justified text, and using centered or flush right text mainly for titles, not body text. Presentation matters for readability and professionalism.
Wow, okay. What an incredible journey through the world of writing effectively. We've covered so much ground. The book isn't just about what to do, is it? It really maps out the minefield of common errors and those tricky, contested usages.
It absolutely does. It tackles those persistent zombie grammar rules, like the one against split infinitives. The book basically says it's nonsense to avoid them. Some, like to blithely interpose, sound perfectly fine, even natural. The rule itself was kind of invented. Then there's the comma splice, joining two full sentences with just a comma. Generally seen as wrong in formal writing, yes, but okay, in short, punchy sentences like Caesar's I came, I saw, I conquered, or for literary effect. Jonathan Franzen apparently hates the comma-then version specifically.
Okay. Specific objections.
Then function shift using words as different parts of speech. The book says this is built into the language. It's how English evolves. Verbs become nouns, thinking. Nouns become adjectives, farty. Adjectives become adverbs, frankly. It's natural. Stranded prepositions ending a sentence with on or up with. Another supposed error that the book dismisses, that Churchill, quote, something up with which I will not put, is probably fake anyway. Many phrasal verbs need a stranded preposition.
Right, like what are you looking at?
Exactly, and it clarifies that versus which versus who. The main rule, don't use who for things, use who for people, which can sometimes replace that in restrictive clauses, but not the other way around, and which can follow a preposition. The principle for which I would die. Double negatives. Logically odd, maybe, but idiomatic, often used for emphasis. I ain't got no cigarettes. Or sometimes for subtlety. She's not unattractive. It implies something different than just attractive.
Okay, so some rules aren't really rules, but then there are the red rag words, the ones that genuinely annoy people if you misuse them.
Yes, exactly. The author points out that error drives language change, but the first people to go over the top get the worst of it. These red rag words might seem arcane, but misuse them, and the professionally outraged will pounce. The real insight here isn't just memorizing a list, but understanding that language is changing. Using a word that's mid-shift in a formal setting can backfire if your audience hasn't caught up. It's about audience awareness as much as correctness.
Knowing your audience's potential triggers.
Precisely, like affect, verb, influence versus effect, noun, result. Or using hopefully to mean it is hoped, hopefully it won't rain, still bugs some people, though it's common now. Or fulsome praise originally meant excessive, sickening praise, now often just means generous. Big difference. Hanged for criminals, hung for pictures. The book goes through quite a few of these. Small words, big potential impact on perception.
Perception is key. And related to that are the wrong notes, subtler things about style or tone.
Yes, these are less about grammar, more about hitting the wrong tone. Avoid being arch, self-regarding pompous, sneering, cutesy, or merely jocular. And be careful with self-descriptions like maverick, cynic, radical. They often masquerade as statements of fact and can sound boastful. Just show, don't tell. And avoid forced jokes like, "Fuh, for my sins."
Yeah, those are annoying.
They really are. Also, showing off with foreign words, Weltanschauung instead of worldview. Using tired epithets, the bard for Shakespeare, overly formal words, bibulous for drunken, or self-flattering terms like call out instead of just challenge. These are subtle signals that can make you sound pretentious or just out of touch. The book ends this section citing journalese and the Da Vinci Code renowned curator Jacques Saunier that missing the signals ineptitude before it.
Wow, what a fantastic deep dive into the written word. We've covered so much today, from language being alive to the power of punctuation, structuring arguments, navigating digital comms. I think the key takeaway for you, our listener, is that mastering writing isn't just about rigid rules. It's about developing that intuitive ear, listening for what sounds right, and then applying specific techniques for clarity, correctness, and persuasion. It's about being understood and getting things done with your words. So here's a thought to leave you with. The next time you're crafting something important, maybe that crucial email or a report, what specific red rag word or wrong note will you consciously listen for and try to avoid? Or maybe what aspect of cadence will you focus on to make your words really land, to make them sing?
And that raises an interesting question, doesn't it? If writing involves both learned skill and that intuitive ear, how much of successful communication really comes down to deliberate practice, consciously applying these principles we've discussed, and how much comes from just absorbing the music of language around you, letting that natural rhythm guide your own writing? Where's the balance?